Hello, this is Paul Chek. Welcome back to my video blogs. Today I thought I would cover a very important topic, and that is, why do you exercise? The topic today is the importance of having a dream or a clear vision for yourself. And without that clear vision or dream, you really don't know how much exercise is enough, how much is too much, or you don't know what type to do. You might just be out there kind of doing whatever's available or whatever other people are doing, but may not be doing what's ideal to accomplish your dream. And a dream also can be stated as a chief goal or objective for your exercise. So I'll begin my presentation today by just giving you some basic things to consider on how this little model I made works here. And then we'll take you through some of the key components that I've outlined for you relating to the importance of a dream as it relates to exercise and your overall well-being. So first of all, in the middle you see the Tai Chi symbol. Yin correlates in this model to the moon or the feminine. Yang correlates to the sun or the masculine. Yang, masculine energy, is catabolic. So whenever you're working out, which means you're spending more energy and resources to do the exercise, then the activity is returning back to you. That would be catabolic or yang exercise. Catabolic means tissue destructive. In the yin cycle, we have anabolic. Yang relates to fire. Yin, anabolic, relates to water. So the anabolic aspect is our recoverability, our ability to regenerate, repair, grow, and gain something from each progressive exercise. But with movement, if you're doing what I call a work-in movement, that is a movement that gives you more energy and vitality per unit of time than it costs to do the exercise. So that would be an anabolic form of exercise. So what you have here is that when we begin a workout or a season like an athlete, or we begin with a fitness program of some kind, ideally we want to be in an excitable state. If you're in a state of burnout, then beginning any kind of physical activity could actually just lead to more problems, and that's extremely common out there. So once we begin with our dream, and the information I'll cover shortly, we're in the excitable state and we go through a warm-up, and that warm-up could include joint mobilization, stretching, foam roller mobilization, key things to get your body ready and optimized for your exercise and tailored specifically to the kind of exercise you're going to be doing in some cases. So as we begin our warm-up, we activate our nervous system, we excite our cardiovascular and circulatory breathing and circulation. We have a progressive shift of blood flow from the internal organs to the periphery as the sympathetic system gets more excited. And then there comes a time when we are at peak working potential. We would then perform our workout sets here, and we would be in a balanced state between working out and recovery based on the design of the program. For example, if you work out at a given intensity, but your recovery period's too short, you don't have enough recovery time, so the yang energy continues to grow until you have no capacity to complete your next set within the prescribed window. So if you're trying to do 8 to 12 reps and you go too fast between exercises, you won't get even to 8. So technically you're now not training effectively, you're draining more than you're training. So we want to recognize that this important place here is the balance, where your physiological functions can handle the intensity of exercise and the duration of exercise, and you know, based on your own developmental sequence, where you're at and where you're trying to go, and other key factors that I teach in the Chek Institute about monitoring yourself, which is too much to get into here. But you want to be able to then determine where is that balance point in a given workout or in any given period, such as a week of training or a month of training or a given cycle of training. The big common problem is here is if you don't follow your body's guidance and manage yourself effectively, which is for doctors. We're talking about Dr. Happiness, what is my dream? But then you have Dr. Movement, we're talking about that. Dr. Quiet, you got to have adequate rest and sleep. And then Dr. Diet, you got to eat effectively. So you always have to consider quiet, diet, movement, and happiness. Why are you doing it? So those factors have to be involved. But if you push yourself past this balance point where you have equal access, in other words, you can dynamically express yourself, fulfill yourself physically, but not to the point that you can't recover from it, and you're doing enough that you're growing towards your dream goal or objective. If you're not doing enough, then you flatline, you just sink back down here like water. So there has to be something to move that water or you don't get excitable, okay? So we want to avoid either in a workout, one workout you can handle. If you overdo a workout, you can push yourself pretty hard. If you push yourself too hard, then you're going to probably risk injury, because as you go past this midpoint, injury becomes much more likely. So we want to maintain this anabolic-catabolic balance, and our goal is to maintain that throughout the training season, with the exception of very carefully prescribed, usually by a highly skilled strength coach or conditioning specialist or a Chek professional, periods where you overextend yourself to trigger more growth, which has to be very carefully balanced out between volume, intensity, recoverability, and many other factors, but that's more for elite athletes. So in those cases, you push them over, you let them come back and rebalance, and you do that in cycles that they can recover from. Now, if a person has a tendency to overdo it in their exercise, maybe they're addicted to exercise, or they use exercise as a means of avoiding stress and don't realize that they're actually creating more stress than they're alleviating, or they're just training incorrectly or being guided incorrectly, which unfortunately is very, very common, or they're doing things like trying to exercise weight off while starving themselves from eating effectively or eating in the right proportions or good quality, then you go to burnout. And once you start going down this way, adrenal fatigue begins. Phase 1 adrenal fatigue is high cortisol. Phase 2 is introduced with the beginning of lower levels of cortisol at key periods in a 24-hour cortisol rhythm. Phase 3 means you have multiple low periods and your adrenal glands can't even produce adequate amounts of cortisol to keep your body's function ideal. And cortisol has many critical functions I don't have time to go into, but it's the key anti-inflammatory hormone, but it's also a key awakening hormone. So it has many regulatory factors, and it's also in a functional relationship with the hormones that drive sleep, melatonin, for example. So if cortisol levels get too high, it disrupts many, many functions in the body, none of which leads to good things. So if you push yourself too far out of habit or out of ignorance, you end up burning yourself out, which you get into stage 3 adrenal fatigue, which then leads to a hypoadrenal response. Typically, I can tell who's in phase 3 adrenal fatigue, because when I test them using the system I teach in HLC2, they start having high scores for hypothyroidism. Typically, you'll see the more hypothyroid indicators you have, in most cases, the more exhausted the adrenal glands are. So you start seeing with hypothyroidism, morning body temperature starts to drop down, aches and pains, lethargy, and depression are not uncommon, and weight gain is also common. And the sad thing is a lot of people who are over-exercising or even overweight or obese are already hypothyroid for many other diet and lifestyle reasons, but go to the gym and try to burn themselves out with exercise without realizing they're trying to lose weight, but they're actually torturing themselves, and their body doesn't have the resources for it. So once again, if you have more of a clear understanding of where you're at, and you use things like the questionnaires in my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, to assess yourself, you can then begin to effectively apply your exercise component to your dream or complete your exercise dreams. So with that said, let me just run you through a couple key indicators. Why is it important to have a dream for what you're trying to accomplish with your exercise? One, with a dream, you can set goals or objectives. So for example, if you're going to train to run a marathon in 6 months, and you know that's when you've got to be able to run at your maximum pace for 26.2 miles, you can see someone that's skilled, or if you're knowledgeable enough, begin to develop a staged training program so that as your body becomes more physically capable of regaining anabolic energy through training and gets stronger, or your endurance gets better, you can continue to grow towards that objective. But if you just don't have any idea what you want to do, and somebody says, hey, I'm going to run a marathon next month, you want to join me, and you jump in, well, you could have any number of problems, and most of those end up in an orthopedic surgeon's office, such as plantar fascia tears, Achilles tendon problems, knee injuries, groin injuries, SI joint injuries, back injuries, and a laundry list of things that happen to people that are, shall we say, not conscious of how they develop themselves because they have no dream. They're just kind of floating around in the world. Now, someone who goes through the process I'm talking about here enough times knows right away when someone says, hey, I'm running a marathon next month, do you want to join me? They know where they're at because they've been through this process, and they might say, hey, yeah, I could get ready for a marathon as long as we're not going to run too fast. Or, no, I need more time. I've been doing more anaerobic training and I don't have that kind of conditioning. My body won't handle that repetitive shock very, very well because I haven't been training that way. So they have sort of a language they've developed based on their own experience. So what is your goal or objective? Is it realistic? If you don't know how to determine if it's realistic, one of the first things you can do is look at your health appraisal questionnaire scores from my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, and just see how high your total stress levels are and what columns you have a lot of stress under, and say, could I effectively normalize my physiological systems as part of my exercise goal or dream within the time frame that I have? In other words, could I do it within the 6 months I need to train for this or get ready for that, or 3 months? And then you have to have a motive because the motive always determines the outcome. So for example, if your motive is to run a marathon, you're going to need to use aerobic training as your main developmental approach. A bunch of weightlifting is probably not going to help you much. So if you know what your motive is and you know what your dream is, then your outcome is much more likely to match the means by which you achieve the end. Another thing is, what is that motive? Are you running the marathon or doing this dream of exercise for yourself, or are you doing it for someone else? My experience, particularly in rehabilitation, where people come in with things like body weight and body shape challenges, oftentimes, for example, women come because they're getting a lot of pressure from their husbands or their boyfriends who have lost sexual attraction to them because of their body shape, and they come in leveraged, like, if I don't do this, my boyfriend or husband isn't going to make love to me anymore, or might leave me. I'm bringing that up because that's a very terrible motive to do exercise on. Most people won't stick to it because the ego feels threatened. It's losing its sense of freedom, its sense of autonomy, by succumbing to the wishes of other people like that. If it's something that you agree to within yourself and they want to do it, that's okay, but make sure you're clear that it's a goal for you. And if someone's putting you in a situation where you feel like you have to exercise, but you don't really want to, my advice is to see if you can find something in that process that can benefit you so that you can walk away with peace that you did it for yourself just as much as you did it for somebody else. Or if someone else is making you do it, you might want to really carefully consider whether or not your freedom's being taken away and whether you should succumb to that sort of manipulation or not. That's something that you need to meditate on. When you're designing a program, there's 5 key factors I teach in my correspondence course on program design by the title of Program Design. One is willingness. When you look at your dream and say, what is my willingness to, say, train for this marathon? If it's not at least a 7 out of 10, chances are you're going to not complete the process. So if a person's willingness isn't 7 or higher, I say the dream is not well qualified. It's probably going to be just another thing on the list of items that you promised yourself at New Year's and never did, or something like that. Ideally, a 9 or a 10 works well. How much energy do you have? Is the amount of energy that you have to invest realistic relative to the dream that you're proposing? How much money do you have? Well, it's one thing to do a marathon, that's not expensive, but if you enter a triathlon, for example, you'll be paying a lot more money, and you'll need a lot more money to train because you got bicycle stuff, you got swimming pools involved, you got other equipment for 3 different sports, so you need to look carefully at how much money you have so that your dream can be qualified as realistic. How much time do you have? That's a very critical thing. Training for a marathon takes a fair bit of time. Training for a bodybuilding competition takes a fair bit of time. Training for a lot of things takes a fair bit of time. Now, there's a lot of things that it doesn't take that much time, but if you're not clear on how much time you have, what you're doing here to try to accomplish a goal, dream, or objective could actually become just another source of stress in your life that leaves you not very excited about participating, and then the willingness meter goes and you're facing not getting your goals met again, okay? And then what resources do you need? Equipment is resources. Having access to a swimming pool or a gym is resources. If you want to use juicing as part of your program, then you need a good juicer. So look at what your resource needs are, and then calculate your willingness, your energy, your money, your time, and your resources, and say, can I effectively do that without putting more stress on me than the benefit that I would gain? Next, we have to look at balance. Once you know what your dream is, and you've looked at the questionnaires in my book, How to Eat, Move, Be Healthy, or How to Chek professional who's an HLC practitioner do a proper assessment on you, you can then determine how far from baseline health am I, and make the changes you need to make to begin first to just get your systems healthy so that you have adequate detoxification, good breathing, good elimination, and all the key functions that are required for anyone to effectively achieve any exercise goal for any long period and not get hurt. What is the level of exercise experience that you have? Because that determines a lot about how you're going to be balanced and what is the dream going to be. Because if you don't have a lot of exercise experience, but your body isn't very healthy or your posture's not good, you're going to need a bigger period to ramp up in this activation phase so that you're excitable, but you're not fragile, okay? What type of exercise will your program require? Do you need aerobic conditioning, anaerobic conditioning, or do you need a mix of the two? That has a big influence on how much time you're going to spend, the intensity you're going to be exposed to, types of movements you're going to be exposed to, and if you're not clear on that, it's very easy to spend a lot of time training but not get good results. For example, someone who's wanting to improve themselves in the line of bodybuilding who does too much cardio will produce a hormonal profile that's antagonistic to the anabolic environment that grows muscle effectively, so you have to carefully manage that kind of stuff. Do you need skills development? So if you're trying to do something as a goal that requires specific skills, you have to consider that when you're planning yourself out so you don't find yourself maybe in good shape but really lousy at what you're trying to do. For example, if your goal is to win a tennis tournament, you could be in great shape, but if you haven't taken enough training in skills development, you might be the best looking, fittest person who gets last place. We don't want that. And then in my advanced program design correspondence course, which is advanced, by the way, I show you how to look into biomotor abilities. These are the different types of ways the body has to be able to move to adapt to any given recreational or training environment. So, strength, power, endurance, flexibility, agility, coordination, and speed are the key biomotor abilities. So when I'm assessing an athlete, for example, I have to evaluate their level or capacity for each of these biomotor abilities relative to the demands of their environment and what their body can do at that time, or I don't know how to bring them back to an optimal baseline and then build them back up. So those are some key things, and hopefully you get my message here that having a dream for your exercise, knowing why you exercise, what you're trying to accomplish is critical, because not only do you need to consider everything I've said, but you got to remember that we go through cycles and we have to change our exercise just like the seasons change, because if we work out all the time and don't change the intensity or the type of exercise we do, we are much more susceptible to injury, and our body has to have rest periods. For example, a runner could rest for a period and maybe spend time surfing or swimming or doing things like that for a while, because that allows them to stay fit, but also allows them to recover from the pounding and the kind of intensity that running brings, yet keeps them fit. If you just run, you'll run yourself right into the doctor's office, and trust me, I've treated thousands of those. So that's the basic message. Resources, the last 4 doctors ebook you'll ever need. The last 4 doctors you'll ever need, How to Get Healthy Now. It's an ebook available at chekinstitute.com under ebooks. That's what the cover looks like. It covers the basics of all the 4 doctors, shows you how to identify what your key values are for each of the 4 doctors, make effective choices, and understand the basics of health. And that information is not in How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy. How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy has a bunch of other information that's also very important. Both of those books are very, very good investments for what you get from them. My program design correspondence course, for those of you that are interested in designing your own programs, teach you how to master the key variables of exercise program design, such as reps, sets, loads, tempos, and rest periods, all of which are kind of like the building blocks of basic program design. And then HLC1 online teaches you a lot of this kind of stuff, plus the information on How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy. Gives you kind of a mix of the 4 doctors, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, and some other things that are important. And you can take that course online, or you can do one of our hybrid versions, which is live instructor time coupled with online study, or you can opt to take one of our live workshops. Thanks for joining today. Hope you have fun getting clear on why you exercise, and I look forward to sharing something with you in my next blog. See you soon.